Hello and welcome to Butterfly Journey's Midlife Adventures, where we share real stories of travel, transformation and new beginnings. I'm your host, Joanna Filmer, and I want you to know that midlife is our time to step beyond expectations and to use travel or even a relocation as a powerful tool for rediscovery and reinvention.
Hey, soul
Let's go.
sister, I heard you made another man cry, but don't worry, baby.
Welcome, Kamilla. For listeners who are new to your story, where in the world are you today?
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I am in Sweden, in Stockholm, actually, but I'm here visiting.
You lived in Sweden, you grew up in Sweden, and then
Yes.
you lived in the UK for 18 years,
I-
and now you're in Norway. Who was that woman before you left the UK, do you think?
So I spent most of the time when I lived in the UK with my English partner at the time. We did a lot of traveling. So actually, I was leading a very adventure-packed life. We prioritized travel and adventures over anything else, decided not to get a house and a mortgage and all that. And so I'm very lucky to have had a very good life together with my ex. But we did drift apart, and during COVID, that became even more noticeable. And so at some point, I realized I was not happy anymore. And it was probably mainly largely to me changing and having perhaps desires to do something more with my life. And so I decided to leave after 23 years. And that was a huge decision. I had no idea what I was getting, what was ahead of me, but I trusted that I would be able to make a new life. And it has been an amazing ride and continues to be a wonderful journey where I'm traveling perhaps more within than doing the external adventures. Yes.
So you said that it was during COVID, and it was really just about that journey of personal discovery that you felt like you wanted to move. So why did you choose to go to Norway?
It was a bit of a chance. I ended up in Norway getting a job just after COVID sort of started opening up a bit again. And that was largely because I had been looking forward to moving away from England. And before COVID, we had planned to move to the Pyrenees. And I was missing mountains and I wanted snow and I wanted to be able to ski. So I got this job at a hotel in Norway. And that was perhaps the start of the end of the relationship. My partner didn't want to move to Norway, so we sort of decided to live apart. And then, whilst I was there, I actually met my new partner that I'm with now. So from the initial visit for a few months in Norway and discovering this small ski resort, I then ended up going back to England, eventually broke up with my English partner, and then I went to Africa and really went on my kind of rediscovery. I've always wanted to work in a, African wildlife national park as a park ranger, and I had this opportunity to volunteer for a small business in North South Africa who also have this wilderness camp in Botswana. And so I was like, this is, it's like a dream come true. I've always wanted to experience this. There was wildlife monitoring as part of the volunteering, and I thought I need to do this for me. And it was amazing. And it's tied in with what I do now, where I take women on adventure and coaching trips to South Africa and Botswana, because that was such a big experience and transformational journey for me.
What was the biggest shift that you started to notice was happening at that point in time?
For me, it was definitely my desire for having a more physical life than I was having. And I was quite often lying, feeling lonely next to him in bed. He'd fall asleep, and I felt rejected repeatedly over quite a long period of time. Not because he didn't love me, but to him, it kind of petered out. I decided that I'm too young to give up on intimacy and just live in this more platonic relationship. So despite still loving my partner very much, I just thought I can't live like this because it's making me unhappy. And it's making me deny a part of myself. And eventually I just thought this can't go on for another 40 years, perhaps, you know. So I gambled on discovering something that would be more aligned with me and my needs. And yeah, so there's that was an overriding feeling for me. I decided I did not want to feel lonely in the relationship and feeling rejected.
I think the conversation around what it feels like to be in a relationship, especially at this age, and there isn't sex, and I guess it can be at any age, and all of those feelings that come with it, but especially when you're younger, because it is a huge part of the relationship and connection. But also people don't talk about it. Have you found that that's been something to talk about, that people don't want to have that conversation in midlife, or have you found women are open to that conversation?
So I would say that I discovered that many of my girl friends had similar problems, and the conversations that I was having was that there was a lot of unsatisfied women. Women in midlife actually have a surge for a period of time, at least, where the desire is definitely there. I think we also discover more about our body's ability to enjoy, uh, just physically. At least I perceive it, that when girls are sort of young, perhaps entering their sexual life, at that point, they don't actually know what their body is capable of.
It's a comfort thing, isn't it? You become much more comfortable in your
Yeah.
skin and your body. If you've had children, then your body's changed. And I think your body changes anyway, just as you get older, once you hit menopause. I think you start, as a woman, you start to feel a lot more confident in your skin.
Yeah.
So with your trip to Botswana,
Yeah. South Africa and Botswana.
how did that come about? Was that a connection, or because that would be amazing? So how amazing that it came to you at that point in your life.
I was actively searching for volunteering, and I don't know if you've heard of HelpX and Workaway. Yeah, so I was looking for somewhere to be without it costing a fortune. And both Workaway and HelpX have this, they connect people who need someone's help, whether it's just manual labor. There's anything from child minding to helping people restore old buildings and castles, and gardening. I found this company, like a private small family business, that have horses, and they were doing this trip on horseback from where they were based in North South Africa into Botswana, where they have their wilderness camp. And they needed someone to drive a vehicle with all the supplies and camping gear and cook for the riders. And, so I took that, volunteered for that role, and then stayed in Botswana at the wilderness camp, also with the opportunity to get a bit involved in the wildlife. And there I met Carla, who I've now been on a journey with a group of women, and we have another journey next year. So it was, I ended up meeting people who I'm now connected with, who have become part of my life. It was quite amazing, and most of them women. So I totally relate to that from perhaps younger women are more in competition, and I always felt that I had more male friends, and I really enjoyed my male friends, and I felt like that's my tribe is mostly men. Now I really value the women that I've connected with, and I feel that it's a beautiful relationship that women can have once they kind of stop competing with each other. And then the support of being in a women's network, I think, is incredibly powerful.
I've noticed in the last few years that the female friendships that circle's become a lot wider and so much more kind of integral and important to my life. It's a support system, a learning system. You gain so much from it. I really feel very blessed with that now. How long was you there for, Botswana and South Africa?
So I was there for nearly 3 months in total. And I was at that place for 2 months. Between South Africa and Botswana, I kept going back and helping them based on what they needed, and got to know the owners, Lloyd and Isabel, absolutely fabulous couple, wonderful people. And then I went to Cape Town for 3 weeks and did a maritime safety course.
How did you have the confidence to say, right, I'm going to Botswana, South Africa? Because South Africa, unfortunately, doesn't have a safe kind of image. How did you feel before you left on that trip, and what skills how did you build your confidence to go to somewhere you'd never been?
I think the answer is I have traveled so much that for me, it was never an issue. I went backpacking on my own as a 22-year-old to to Southeast Asia, and that's when I met my English ex now. So I've done so much backpacking where before mobile phones and smartphones became a thing. So showing up and literally asking where's the place to stay. And so I think I have honed the skill of traveling over a very long period of time and become friends with the unknown. I see it as, the adventure is truly when you travel and you don't know where you're going to stay, you don't know who you're going to meet, and it unfolds. So for me, I never really felt any discomfort or the sense of, oh, this is potentially not safe. That's not really how I think, but I know that of course there are elements of areas where it's not safe, but I would say that that's true for any country. There'll be places where literally you are not safe, and you just need to be smart about where you go, how you go about exploring, when, so being safe, but from being street smart, I guess.
So do you think there was any difference between traveling as a 22-year-old to then traveling when you're 40, whatever age you were in your midlife? Did you feel, what were the differences you felt? Challenges or, the wins? What did you get from it?
So I think being more confident in myself and being more truly trusting me that I'm capable and I can manage regardless of what comes. I've always been an extrovert and I've always been easygoing, connecting with people. So that was never really something I struggled with. And I know that I can strike up a conversation. I'd never have to feel lonely as long as there's people. And I'm quite happy to be in my own company as well. So I don't need to constantly have people around me. But I also know I'm not going to sit quietly in a corner and feel lonely in a restaurant. If I want to chat, I can strike up a conversation. I think I felt the whole role of driving the vehicle originally scared me because I hadn't been driving much for many years. And I thought, oh, I don't know if I can do that. And then a friend of mine, she did a hypnotherapy session. And I came to South Africa not knowing whether I would feel comfortable or not, because until, you're there. But when I was told, right, you're going to drive, it's you and, a packed Jeep, I was like, yeah, sure. And then the first day I set off with the vehicle, I remember I didn't quite put the handbrake down. So I drove off and I was like, oh, it's not really. Before I realized that I hadn't really, it was still on a little bit. So of course it was the car was struggling a bit. But then after that, it was fine, and I loved it. Absolutely loved being, driving on my own, through northern South Africa, Limpopo province, and it felt
Beautiful.
Incredibly adventurous, empowering. I had to navigate. Quite often, I didn't have signal, so I was like looking at, a screenshot of a map and finding my way, parking up on look for the big tree. And then the horse riders, and they arrived, and I had prepared camp, and luckily I was in the right place. So that was an incredible experience where I felt I can do this, and I'm not sure I would have taken on that particular role as a 22-year-old. I think I would never had the same confidence.
For sure. And I guess it's a bit of a stepping stone between what was about to change, wasn't it? It gave you the space, which is something that I think is really important. So I believe that when you travel, you get space to think and reconnect to who you are. So do you think that trip allowed you the space to find out who you were then, or where you were starting to go?
Yes, I think so. I think I realized I had been a very good partner to my ex, and I hadn't necessarily fulfilled all my dreams. and given up on some of the things that I loved because it wasn't something he enjoyed. And I loved doing everything he wanted to do. So I was a happy participant in his activities. He didn't necessarily reciprocate. And I think I realized that I needed to make sure I kept doing what I love so that I wasn't giving up on those passions. And Africa had always been this, like, I wanted to explore the continent more, and he was never really into it. So we never, apart from a trip to South Africa in 2010 and one trip to Morocco even earlier, we hadn't, explored the continent at all. And so I realized how fascinated I am with Africa, with the nature, with the wildlife, and that I want to see more of it. And I thought, I want to be here. I felt very strongly that I'm definitely coming back. And I have been back every year now for 3 years running. So it's
Yeah.
definitely a new passion.
So it did give you, from what you said, it gave you confidence. It gave you the space to know that this is kind of what you wanted to do. You said that by going on adventures, you become adventurous. And I think that's a really key idea in the understanding of going traveling, to see it as an adventure and to
Yes.
see it as a journey, because that then took you towards Norway. So what happened after you came back from South Africa then?
So at that point, we had split up. I did go back to England because I still had all my stuff there. We had some long conversations, and it was a difficult time, but I had already made up my mind that I was moving.
Yeah.
And so then I moved to Norway and decided, well, actually, I went sailing with a stranger for 3 weeks, as you do. So I sailed from Crete across to the Cyclades, and it was a wonderful experience. And also, I had a conversation on a plane for 4 hours chatting to this man who eventually then we kept in touch. And he said, "Oh, come sailing with me." And that was off the back of me doing this maritime safety course. And I thought, yeah, why not? So I went sailing for 3 weeks. And after that, I ended up moving in the autumn. I ended up moving to Norway and decided to jump in the deep end and move in with my new partner basically from the off, because I thought, I could date him and we could live apart. But then once we moved together, and he's got 2 kids and I've never really wanted kids, so I thought I will not know whether that works unless I live with him and I'm part
Yes.
of his life with his kids. But 2 years in, and I'd say the relationship with the kids is amazing. It has been this beautiful, unexpected bonus in my life that I never really expected I would experience, So life has some very interesting turns on the journey, I would
It
say.
does. So you talked openly about being child-free
Yeah.
and not having children. How does that shape your sense of purpose and legacy now? I have many friends that don't have children, so it's an interesting conversation that maybe some people feel shy to talk about or embarrassed.
Yeah, so I do think that you spot on there about when you don't have children. I think it's quite natural to start to think about what is your legacy? What does my life mean? And I think we all want that sense of that we have made a difference. And quite often
Yes.
I look at friends who have children and that brings them purpose, bringing up children, having added to the world's population with some hopefully healthy, happy individuals. When you don't have children, you don't really have that like concrete purpose of influencing the world through the your descendants. And so I think you search for a meaning and a purpose in a different way, because I think it's very natural. And also for women in particular, I find that we have a deeper desire to have a positive impact. I think, I'm not saying men don't, but I think women, there's more perhaps naturally a nurturing, caring side to us. That means that we are looking at influencing people in a positive way rather than perhaps, I'm not saying this is exclusively male, but men perhaps want to build and be more, it's more introducing innovation and being changing the world from a more practical way. And I think women perhaps lean more naturally towards changing the world through the relationships, through the conversations, and through caring for others. And so me getting into coaching and having this desire to influence the world through the impact I have on individuals, trusting that that's positive and it's like ripple effects, pebble, you throw a pebble in a pond and those rings are spreading. And I think that's how I see my purpose, is to have a positive impact where by impacting someone in a positive way, they will then impact other people and therefore it's a wider impact.
I love that. And what's the conversations you hear with the women that you know that don't have children? Do they feel the same? And where does travel fit into that, do you think?
It's quite interesting. When I took this group of women in August to South Africa and Botswana, there was one lady who doesn't have children. And she definitely was searching for purpose and had a deep desire, and still has, to find something where she feels that she's making a difference and that she has a positive impact. And for her, the trip was incredibly empowering. She felt that she's perhaps more capable than she realizes. The connections that were made during the trip in that group between the women was also beautiful. And I think we all enriched each other. The other women who had children, for them it was the case of, okay, the children are adults. One had still quite a lot of responsibilities and heavily involved. And I think for her, it was perhaps that giving herself permission to focus on what she wants to do and no longer
Yes.
being there for everybody else, but actually looking after herself and prioritizing herself. And that's also something that I think women struggle with a lot, is that, actually prioritizing yourself so that you can keep on giving, to avoid becoming resentful, avoid sort of feeling like, yeah, I'm always, giving and no one gives back in this as much as I'm giving. And that creates
Yeah.
actually a negative impact eventually. So it's helping. The travel made them all feel that this is amazing, and I love that I've done this for myself, because they all
Yes.
felt that it was a big step on the journey towards enjoying life, the rest of their lives,
Yes.
and prioritizing themselves, and the confidence that you could see they sort of grew, both in how they had conversations with other people. And after, when we were parting, there was a lot of conversations around the benefit of having this connection between themselves, and then having met, people who are different, and having sort
Yeah.
of being inspired by each other.
So you moved to Norway. What do you think has been your biggest challenge of moving to Norway? And I think you've taken a new direction in your career that I guess is on this path.
Yes. So the biggest challenge I would say, is crafting a new life professionally,
Yeah.
starting my own coaching business. It definitely takes longer than you think it's going to take to make it a financially viable venture. So I think learning about myself, self-doubt, and how I meet the challenges. And that's been a wonderful journey in many ways, incredibly rewarding. And I enjoy also, when I coach, I learn something every time. So working with people is the beauty of coaching, is that you also develop as you help others. It helps you. There is that continuous development that I feel it will never stop. And I think it's the same for everybody. But when you are in coaching, you might be more aware of it because it is a part of what you do. So, but being able to persevere when it's difficult and it doesn't go the way that you want, being able to realize that I have moments when I doubt what I'm doing, my decisions, and then being able to take myself out of those negative thoughts, and knowing that I now have tools that allow me to find a better direction, and stop myself from procrastinating, feeling overwhelmed, and pick myself up and move forward. And I think it's the action precedes confidence. And that's also why when you are traveling, you are reconfirming to yourself that you are capable.
Yeah, exactly. And this is the point where all of those travel's so perfect, because it can come at this point in life where you can build connections and build your confidence in yourself and take the time out to think about what you want to do next,
Yes.
and really kind of align everything that you want, and travel gives you the confidence to say, yeah, I can do this. So, and you are doing it. How did you choose to go into coaching then? Why was that specific? Was that something that you'd come from before? Or was it just that this journey's taken you into that space?
So I worked in customer service. I
Yeah.
was looking after people who were studying courses, and I unofficially was mentoring, supporting, encouraging for many, many years. And I love people, and I had conversations with other people around, I'd love to work with people and, coach. So I had a friend who was a coach, and she encouraged me to study a course with the lady that she had studied with. She said, "Oh, it's amazing. You're going to love it." And so that was my first step, was doing the NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. And that was the stepping stone. And then I continued on that journey, and I've added other modalities. And it was, I guess, my passion for people. I think you
Yeah.
have to love people in order to work with people.
And learning something new is so empowering at
Yes.
this age, particularly,
Yeah.
and also within the tech space. So you talked about your adventure mindset then. How does that show up in your work now, and how you create your space and the decisions that you make today?
So I want to use the adventure as the vehicle for helping people to transform. And quite often when people are stressed, is they are too much in their own head, and getting them to do things can be a very efficient way of being more present. When they're focusing on having a conversation with a stranger, it gives them a buzz. It's an adventure because you don't really know. You might get rejected, or you might have a really interesting conversation. It can go either way. So using micro adventures in daily life, taking a new route, trying a different means of transport. If you on the tube, catch the bus, just it doesn't have to be these huge journeys and big adventures, but it's helping people to start to approach daily life with a more adventurous spirit, trying new food, trying a new hobby. But most importantly, I still think is the connection with other human beings. I think a lot of people are stuck on their phones, and getting them away from their screens and actually connecting in real life, having real conversations is also very important. It is an adventure. When you don't know someone, you actually embark on an adventure when you strike up a conversation with them, because you
Yeah,
don't really know where it's going to
absolutely.
lead. But it
That's
could
right.
be your next best friend. Like it is possible. So that's where I bring in the adventure side, and encouraging people to, instead of looking at the unknown with sort of a sense of fear, to look at it with excitement and to be curious. So stimulate the curiosity and stimulate that side where you're finding solutions, you are being innovative and taking action, because quite often people end up just being stuck in their patterns, and nothing changes until you.
It's very safe, isn't it? It's a safe space to be, You can get very comfortable. Somebody said to me the other day, you can get very comfortable not wanting to face being uncomfortable. And I thought that's actually it's so true.
Yes, absolutely. And for most people, it's better the devil you know. So most people fear the unknown more than the situation they're in,
Yes.
because as
Changing a job, going traveling, leaving a relationship,
yes,
all of those things that we've been talking about, it's
yeah,
facing the unknown and just knowing that you'll be okay, you're going to get
yes,
through it, and you'll gain so much from that experience, whatever it is. I love the ideas of switching up your routine. It's like taking a different route. That's such a good one. Changing the music, always eating the same foods, change up your food. So
yes,
they're really important little like micro things that you can do every day just to bring in, and it's actually really healthy for your brain to be
yes,
doing that.
yes. Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's proven that people who continue to learn throughout life end up often living longer and being happier. So I do think that's an incredibly important part of the puzzle of how do we live younger for longer. It's stimulate the brain and the body. And I think action is so important. People can get stuck in watching other people do exciting things on their phones, and social
Mm.
media is
Mm.
is like a drug. It pulls you in.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so stimulating people to get a dopamine hit from action that they are
Mm.
taking is to
Mm.
try and, wean them off a little bit of perhaps being stuck too much watching others do and
Yeah.
start
Yeah.
doing themselves.
That's a really good way of putting it, watching the adventures of others and actually having your own adventures, whether they're mini adventures or big adventures, it's just
Yeah.
shaking it up, shaking yourself up. So for a woman who's listening, who feels something is changing, but she's not quite sure what she should do or where she's going, what would you say to her, to that woman?
I would say start with a 7-day challenge where every
Mm.
day for 7 days you do something that is slightly out of your comfort zone. So start small, start testing a new drink or a new dish that you've never tried, going to perhaps a new area of your town, take a different route, connect with a neighbor that you've never spoken to.
Mm.
These are
Mm.
small things, but actually every time you do it, you will be feeling a little bit of a buzz, and then you can reflect, hey, so how did it go? What did I feel? And what did it make me change in how I view things? And that
Mm.
is sort of just doing that for a week. It might seem sort of almost like, what? How is that going to change? But it does, after a week of doing it, it probably is going to feel like, oh, this is actually, I'm enjoying this. And then you continue, and suddenly you have added something more to your life, the way you live your
Mm.
life. And then suddenly thinking about slightly bigger decisions doesn't feel quite as intimidating. So
Mm.
it's starting small, and each step is a move in a certain direction. And, you can change the direction, but just moving is starting to move. It's literally the first, when you think about a train, that first, getting into motion after being still
Mm.
takes most of the energy. Once the train is running, it's almost, it's speeding
It's
along.
propelling itself forward. It's in
Uh,
movement. That's
it's
it.
the same for us, is that first action is to actually doing it. So that first step is incredibly powerful.
Final question. What would you say to that woman back when you were sitting during COVID, like 21, 22, when everything was starting to change? What would you want her to know? Maybe, is there a piece of advice that you would give for her at that point?
I think I would say the conversations, communicate, because if you are open and you dare to approach the subject and be vulnerable, you can overcome a lot of potential problems by
Mm.
simply having conversations. So I
Mm.
would say, and I don't know where I would be now if I had had more courage to be more open with my ex-partner.
Mm.
I think we were
Mm.
both quite bad at being open about our inner
Mm.
feelings, and having the conversation, being vulnerable, communicating, being open. It's never going to be as bad as you think. We are our
Mm.
own worst, harshest critic. And so trusting that other people will be kinder than you are to yourself, I'd say
Yes.
that's probably the advice I would give.
I love that. Kamilla, thank you so much. That was such a wonderful conversation. There were so many amazing insights in there. So whoever listens to this will take something away from this around travel, around midlife, about not having children. Everything is an adventure.
Yeah.
And like you said, being adventurous is good for you because you become more adventurous and you grow.
Yeah.
Kamilla, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Anna.
You've been listening to Butterfly Journeys Midlife Adventures with me, Joanna. Until next time, may you keep awakening, emerging, and evolving on your own midlife butterfly journey. Follow the podcast, hit subscribe, and share it with your fellow midlife butterflies. And if you have a story to share, reach out. My emails and DMs are in the show notes. I would love to hear from you. Your journey could inspire another woman.